Well, yeehaw! Don't you like this music, guys? Welcome to Monet Cafe. In this particular video I'm making just for my patrons, you're going to get the real-time footage. This is a lovely sunflower photo I got from a dear sister in the Lord I met, and I got some of her beautiful photos, and I want to share with you guys the benefit of doing quick studies. Now this is sped up a bit, but I'm about to show with you that this painting was done in 15 minutes or less, and often we just get too fussy on things, and it's great to do these little studies. So let's get started on this. Now I recommend when you do studies to work small. This is a 5x7 piece of paper that I have created myself. I also recommend working inexpensively, and I do have a video on how to create your own pastel surfaces in 8 different ways. This particular piece of pastel paper I made myself using Art Spectrum Color Fix Primer. It comes in various colors. I coated mine in this particular example with a foam roller to get a very smooth surface. Now you may be familiar that Color Fix is also a pastel paper. So you can buy the papers or you can create them yourself if you like, the way I've done here. And you can put it on various surfaces. It can be matte board, gator board. I may have even used the smooth side of a piece of watercolor paper for this particular example. So now this is all going to be real time, and I kind of wanted to talk you through my process and how I'm actually, notice I'm not drawing anything out. I'm working more with shapes. That kind of seems to be my method of operation when painting is painting shapes rather than individual things. You know, I see the big shapes first, and then I gradually narrow it down after that. Now the most identifiable shapes I could find to kind of get things laid out correctly were those centers of the sunflowers. If you squint your eyes, you can see kind of where they are, and of course you can see that very large one in the front there, but they gradually recede and they get smaller. And you know, I'm not getting so fussy about getting a perfect circle, and you know, again, a most common question I get is how to create a painterly effect, loose and impressionistic, and this is one way to do it. Don't get so fussy. You can create just general shapes, and it's amazing how the human brain puts it together, and that's a good way to keep loose and painterly and get that kind of chunky, almost geometric feel to your work. Okay, so again, I'm just looking at kind of general positioning of those centers and using just kind of a medium dark value purple, and kind of working from there. I wanted to say here too, before I paint too much, that the piece of paper that I coated with the Art Spectrum, I did it on a much larger piece of paper and then cut it down. So instead of cutting up all your paper and doing each paper like that, each size, you can do it the other way. So either way that works for you. Now I know those centers are darker. I do like to get in the dark values first. Just had a video recently about working dark to light and some of the reasonings why we do that in pastel painting. I also like to try to think of, now I even got a darker, I think that's the Terry Ludwig eggplant. Everybody talks about what's that really dark that you have. I don't like using black. Black's kind of dead. Why not use a dark, rich color instead? It's going to make your artwork just vibrant. Now you probably can't notice here, but as I'm working, I am paying attention to the positioning of these flower heads. Notice that some of them are turned, like the one at the bottom, it's turned kind of facing down. The one that's up higher, the highest one in the front, is facing almost forward but turning a little bit to the viewer's right, and the one behind it down low is facing down. So that is also going to make your painting look more believable, because that's really what happens in nature. I mean, there are some rare times when, not rare, I think it's common for sunflowers, for all of them to be facing the sun, and that's kind of neat, but I really love it when you get the spontaneity. So my point here is that pay attention to the fact that nature has its own little musical positioning, and that is definitely going to make your artwork look a little bit more painterly and interesting. Now I just decided, again, I know I only have about 15 minutes, so instead of getting too fussy on the sky, I just picked a pretty blue that I liked. I just thought this was a really beautiful blue. It leans a little bit more towards the cyan rather than the more of a purpley blue. I'd say it's a warmer blue, And I know in the background I'm going to have some distant leaves or mountains or trees, and I think I decide later to use a teal, a deeper teal, to create that. So I'm just going to paint here for a little bit, but I want you to pay attention to the fact that I'm just getting in shapes. I do want to say, right here, I wanted to go ahead and say something here. First of all, I'm using this medium value orange. Now I know there's all kinds of different colors in those petals of these sunflowers, but I'm using the medium value to get in my petal shapes of all the flowers. I'm going to go in over this and change. Notice some of them are in shadow. I will come back and talk about that. Some of them have more sunlight hitting them, but for this right here, again, I know I've got to work fast, so I'm just using this medium value orange to get in the sizes, the positioning, and the general idea of where these flower petals are. All right, so watch a little bit longer, and I will jump back in when I have some more things to add. And now you can see that I did in those background sunflowers. I wanted them to appear further back, and I know things lighten in value as they recede. So I went ahead and did those petals as light. And now I'm just taking that lighter orangey yellow and applying it to the places where the sun is hitting the petals. And that's a great thing to keep in mind every time you paint. Pay attention to where is the sun. If you notice, look at the tall sunflower facing more towards the viewer, and you can see that the upper left is more where the sunlight's coming through those petals. The lower right underneath is more in shadow. So, and that's pretty much the same with all of the flowers. So for now, I haven't gotten in any of the shadows. I'm just working on some of these lighter values on the tips of the sunflowers. Again, knowing that I don't have very long to work here. And I said I did this for 15 minutes. It may have been a little longer than 15 minutes, but it was pretty darn close because I had to go with my mom. Didn't have to. I wanted to take my mom to radiation like I do every morning for 6 weeks. And so I'm going to focus on doing these little studies in the mornings before I leave. I will recommend, if you're going to be doing this, go ahead and get your paper ready. It would be good to work on a consistent paper. Commit maybe, and I want to do this in our Patreon group, to where we commit to, I know people do the 30 paintings in 30 days. I know sometimes that's a little hard with life, especially if you're working and outside, if art is not your main thing. So I was thinking of maybe like a 10 or 20 challenge. I mean, we could even start with like a week challenge, 7 days of fast painting, something like that. But my point is that let's not make it harder on ourselves by having each time to make a surface or cut out or cut it up or get the right size. Go ahead and make multiple. It'd be neat if you did the same size, 5x7s. I mean, make yourself 10 5x7 painting surfaces. Just get them ready. Maybe go ahead and pick out what reference photos you're going to do so that you're ready for the challenge. Then each time you sit down to paint, you don't spend all this time hunting for a photo. You guys, I'm sure you can relate to that because I've done that so many times that now I've learned ways to just save reference images in little groupings so that it's easier for me to find. Now you can see I'm adding the shadowy sides to those flowers. Now I am going to come over the top of this with some other deeper oranges, I believe. But now you see, if you squint your eyes, you can see those flowers are starting to have some depth to them and be more believable. That's how life is. There's all kinds of different colors and shadows and coolness and warmth based on the lighting in the reference photo or in real life. All right, so I'm going to continue with more music and enjoy. Notice here that I'm adding a very rich orangey red, and sometimes we don't think of those colors as being in sunflowers. That's often when we're starting out in art, when we're kind of a beginner artist, we think of all these petals as being yellow. And actually, if you squint your eyes and look at that, especially that biggest sunflower in the foreground, you might can catch a little hint of what I'm talking about. There are some deeper colors in that, some more than just the yellow. And reds, just go ahead and punch it up a little bit. Don't exaggerate it. And that's another one of my rules. I'm becoming, or I'm developing rules that I suggest to get a more painterly, loose effect in your art. And that is one of them, exaggerating color. And I have quite a few other. I need to get these all together and present them in a video or a lesson just to help everyone with those strategies. Here is where I'm adding that rich, little darker in value teal color that is a really great color for pushing back distant trees, distant foliage, distant mountains, things like that, and I just thought this color would work. I had considered using purple. Purple's another great color to use to push back trees and things like that, but I knew I was going to have purple shadows in these sunflowers, and I just wanted another color that was going to be give more contrast to the painting in general. I apologize here for my shoulder being in the way and kind of messing up the focus, but I do move in just a minute. I've got more of a medium to dark value green, and I use this to give an indication of the stems of the flowers. Now I know there's a lot of bright sunlight shining on the leaves in various positioning of where the leaves are. And again, I got to keep in mind, I've only got a few minutes, so I'm only giving suggestions of things. And once again, that's the point of this lesson. It helps us to stay loose and painterly. We don't have a lot of time to get fussy. Now, I know I've got some richer greens in the foreground. Typically, I probably would have added more darks to indicate the roots of the flowers, but I'm just going to let this one be very sketcherly. Is that a word? Sketchy? So again, I'm just using warmer greens in the foreground to give the indication of and sunflowers have these broad leaves. They're kind of large leaves and they kind of lay out flat. And so I'm just hinting at some of those. Of course, we know in perspective things just get smaller as they go to the background. So I've just gotten a suggestion of those leaves. Now I know there's bright sunlight shining, so I get that really vibrant, I kind of call this like a grass green, just a hint at the sunlight just laying across those leaves. And so I'm just looking, I really zone out when I'm painting, especially these quick studies like this. I zone out and I just start forgetting what it is I'm painting, and I'm just looking at where do I see those bright leaves, and I don't even think of them as leaves. Where do I see those bright things in the painting? And it causes you to truly paint what you see and not what you think you see. That was one of the greatest things. I think there's a book called that. One of the greatest things I learned in an art class I had when I was in graphic design is to our brains want to force things sometimes as to what we think it is, rather than us zoning out, like I said, and forgetting about what the thing is and what's really there. It's not a yellow leaf or petal on every single petal. We start to really focus on what is there, what is in our plane of vision, what colors, what values, what shapes. Instead of drawing flowers, we're literally drawing shapes. All right, so enjoy the rest of this, and I think I might just finish this out with some music and pop in at the end. So I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I really hope you're going to participate in this. I want to share this video on of course, this is for you guys, my precious patrons exclusively. I will have a speed video version of this on the YouTube channel, but I'm going to share this in the patron page. And you know, unfortunately, they got rid of the community tab on our Patreon pages for new people, for new Patreon accounts. So that's why we have our Susan Jenkins Patreon group on Facebook. That's for my patrons exclusively, for us to communicate. Of course, you can communicate on the Patreon page. You can share your comments to my videos and things, but how I get to see your work is by you coming over to our Patreon page on Facebook, Susan Jenkins Patreon group. And I notice most of my patrons have asked to join that group. You just ask to join it. Get on Facebook, look for Susan Jenkins Patreon group, ask to join, and answer the one question that says, are you a Patreon of Susan Jenkins? And you just say yes. And that way I can accept you to the group and I can see your work. That's the fun part. Now, you know, we've got our Monet Cafe art group on Facebook as well, and that's awesome for all of you guys to share together. But I think of our Patreon group in Facebook, Susan Jenkins Patreon group, as our exclusive little more private place where we can share and grow. And I haven't forgotten, I am going to be doing some painting, giving some art critiques for some of you guys who have asked me to do that and allowed me to do that in public. So I will be making a video going over, I think I've got 3 of you who have told me that you would love for me to do that with one of your paintings. And I'm thinking that I would like to do each month, you know, right now in our Patreon group, we have where the first 100 patrons, we're about to get there right now, I think I'm at 95. When I get to 100, hopefully very soon, I'll have a drawing. One of you will win the drawing. I think I'm going to just literally do it the old-fashioned way, is cut up all the names and draw it and do it on video. And one of you will win, and you will win an original painting of mine. I think I'll give the winner an option of 3 paintings to choose from, a copy of my book, The Mountain Queen, and also a $50 gift certificate to Dick Blick Art Supply online. And I think I'm going to go ahead and try to do some sort of drawing every month for my patrons. And maybe, I'm still learning and growing with the best ways of what I can offer you, and maybe even picking one person, if you ask me, pick one person that I'll do a painting critique to that volunteers to let me do it, and everybody can learn from that critique. So anyway, that's just some of my thoughts. Feel free on here on the Patreon page just to share your thoughts about that, suggestions, ideas, because this is for you guys. I'm trying very hard to give my patrons something a little bit more. I mean, even though it says on the page that it's really just an appreciation tier, that's the only one I have, just to help me keep this going. But I can't help it. If you guys are spending $5 a month, I want to try to give you something extra. And I just, again, always want to reiterate how special you are to me. My heart just beams when I think there are 95 people out there who are helping me by giving me $5 a month. And I know maybe that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's a whole lot to me. It means a lot for my life. It means a lot for what I'm able to do. And I do still have my other bookkeeping job that I have to do, and so many other things in life. You guys know what I'm talking about. I know you guys can relate to the craziness of life. All right, so now I am really going to be quiet. I think this is pretty much done, but I hope you learned something. I hope you're going to practice this and do this. And I know you will grow. Oh, I'm adding some little, a little bit more dark highlights, just some little pizzazz and oomph to to draw the eye to where the stems are, maybe where some of the little shadows are. And that's pretty much it. I think I'm getting close to the 15-minute mark here. And at this point was where I was like, oh, yep, gotta go. It's time to go. So my mom today had a very successful treatment. Well, they're all very successful, but she had a little coughing fit yesterday, and it was kind of hard because the radiation's in her neck. But today we prayed, and she was very still, and it worked out great. So anyway, praise the Lord. Look at these sunflowers. Don't they look like they're praising the Lord? All of nature looks like that to me, how trees grow upward to the heavens. Now I'm speeding up this last little part here just because I want to show you something at the end that I've decided to do. This photo that I got was from a dear woman that I met only briefly. You know how life just puts people in your path that you know it was meant to be, and she's a precious person, and she shared with me some of her beautiful photography, giving me permission to paint it. So here's what I decided to do. I found this neat little window frame that was divided up into 6 different little frames, each of them I'm fairly sure these are all 5 by 7. I know they're all the same size, but I think my painting was 5 by 7. And, you know, you could choose to do these horizontally or vertically. And I thought, how neat if I took all of the reference images that this one woman let me use and put them all in this frame as a little painting display here. So I just thought I'd share that. It was pretty inexpensive, and it makes for a neat little presentation. So there you have it. So let's do some more quick studies. I also am going to give permission to use this reference photo. I will share it on the Patreon page. So happy painting, and I look forward to seeing the quick studies from you guys. Bye-bye.